give a nice warm welcome to Jeremy Lucas.
I woke up on the sofa and said a prayer. Dear God, please don't let me die of AIDS, and don't let Amanda's crack-dealing boyfriend from Atlanta murder me. I promise that if you do these two things for me, I will never, ever have sex ever again. I was 8 hours away from becoming a man, and I was not exactly sure that I liked it at all. You see, the way you become a man from Birmingham, Alabama in the late 1980s is you go on a road trip to a place called Panama City Beach, Florida. And so me and 5 of my friends, we were gonna take our senior trip. So we piled, all 5 of us, in my friend Dale's family's brand new Astro van with the wood siding panels, and my brand new Honda Civic hatchback, and we headed down the road from Birmingham to Panama City Beach, and we were playing DJ Easy Rock and Rob Bass, and we were going, and we were joy and pain and sunshine and rain, and we got all the way down there, and we had shoe polish on the back of our cars, class of 1989, and we were about to do the things which others said could not be done. Well, a lot of people said they could be done, but I had just never done them before. At 17, I had never had a drink, and I was still a virgin. And this was the time for me to become a man. Now, it was a pretty complicated story because I grew up as a Southern Baptist kid, and basically, if you even talked about sex, you were gonna go to hell forever. And so, on the one hand, I had my mom who had taken me to church since the time I was a baby. And she was like, don't do anything that's gonna send you to hell. But then on the other hand, I had my dad who was like, you need to do all those things. Because if you don't do those things, I'm not sure what's gonna happen to you in the future. Go down there and sow your wild oats. So we did. We drove all the way down I-65 to Panama City Beach, and we rented a house, and the first night we went out and we were riding up and down the strip, and we were cruising, and we were looking at the girls, and the girls were looking at us. But that night, nothing happened. The second night, we got out on the strip, we did the same thing. We're cruising up and down the strip, and we're looking at the girls, and they're looking at us, and they look so good. And nothing happened. So the third night, me and my friend Scott, we decided we're gonna go out, just the 2 of us. We're seeing it, maybe 5 guys is a little bit hard to find girls for, but maybe the 2 of us will be able to work something out. So we got in my red Honda Civic, and we started heading down the strip. And it didn't take long, and we saw these 2 girls in a Camaro, and they passed us the first time. We were coming, and then we watched them, and they were looking at us, and we were looking at them, and things started looking up. So we go down, and we turn around, and we come back down the strip the other direction, and they're looking at us again, and then they give us this signal to pull over. That's a good signal. If you're cruising up and down the strip in Panama City Beach, Florida on your senior trip, getting the signal to pull over is a really good thing. And it was a great thing because we started chatting up Amanda and Lisa from Atlanta, Georgia. And I tell you, things progressed quickly from one thing to another. And then all of a sudden, we are in the 3rd floor hotel room of the Fountain Blue Hotel in Panama City Beach, and I am having my very first drink. And they fixed me something that I will never forget. They fixed me a fuzzy navel. You might not think that becoming a man includes the fuzzy navel, but for me, it did. It did. And so after about 5 of those, right, see, after about 5 of those, things started going really well between me and Amanda. And the next thing I remember is waking up naked in her bed with my friends Scott and Lisa in the other twin bed in the hotel room. And things started happening again. I looked over at Amanda, and she looked over at me. I was ready after years of home practice to do this thing. So I rolled over, and me and Amanda, we started having sex. And about 2 minutes into it, I had to get up and go throw up. And that's exactly what happened. I went and threw up, and then I came back and I passed out in the bed. And the next thing I remember is waking up the next morning. My friend Scott probably worried about whether or not I was alive. So we got up and we put our clothes on, and we swapped numbers, and we got in the car, and Scott said, "I can't believe you did that." I said, "What?" He went, "You had sex without a condom." He said, "You're totally gonna get AIDS." Now remember, this is the late 1980s in Birmingham, Alabama, what we're talking about. Our education about sex, it hasn't changed much. It didn't change much from about 1889 to 1989, and it's probably about the same now. But in the middle of the 1980s, when nobody knew what caused AIDS, and when people were dying all over the place, I was absolutely terrified. All I knew at that point was that I was gonna die of AIDS. I was definitely going to hell for sure. And then Scott drops the last bomb on me. He says, and Lisa told me that Amanda has a boyfriend in Atlanta, and he's a crack dealer. I said, "Oh shit, what? You mean I've just had unprotected sex with the girlfriend of a crack dealer from Atlanta?" Now, as a kid from Birmingham, Atlanta was the biggest metropolis that we knew. Everything there was sin and deprivation. It was a horrible place. Except for Amanda and Lisa. They were really awesome. And so, all I knew is that he took me home, and I passed out on that sofa, and I woke up sometime many hours later, and I had been crying because I was absolutely sure that I was going to die. At that point, becoming a man felt exactly like regret and tasted exactly like peach schnapps. It had quickly devolved into one of the worst days of my entire life. And I was sure that becoming a man was going to kill me. Later that day, all of my friends went back out and they said, "Do you want to go with us?" With this strange look on their face that sort of looked like dead man walking. I said, "No, I'm gonna stay home." So I got Pink Floyd and I put it in the cassette player and I drove down to a deserted place on the beach and I listened to Comfortably Numb. It was really a healthy thing for me, I think, to do that at that point in time. And it was at that point that I continued praying to God, "Please, God, don't let me die. I'm never gonna have sex again, ever. This is finished for me. I will just become celibate as long as I don't die." So we finished our trip. My friends, none of them became men on that trip. It was only me. They were looking at my experience and thinking, "That doesn't look good." So we drove all the way back to Birmingham, Alabama, and it was really for the next 2 years that every time I caught a cold, every time I had the flu, I was convinced I was dying of AIDS. At the end of that summer, I started dating a girl from a nearby college campus, and we had sex, but every time it was with a condom. So it was already at that time that my promises to God had changed slightly. Said basically, I'm gonna have sex, but I'm gonna use a condom, but I'm likely still going to hell, and I'm likely still gonna die of AIDS. And I was still worried about Amanda's crack-dealing boyfriend murdering me for months after that. She had my home telephone number. What was I thinking? Years later, I finally got up the courage to go and give blood. I would have never gone and gotten an HIV test in Birmingham, Alabama in the late 1980s. The stigma was too much. You could never let anybody find out. But I did it. I went and gave blood because I knew that they were testing all of the blood and that if it came back positive, they would tell me. And it was only after giving blood that one time, those many years later, that I was convinced that that wasn't how I was going to die. And so now, when I pray to God, I pray for slightly different things. I pray for the courage to keep talking about what it means to be a man. And I keep talking about the fact that what it means to be a man has so much less to do with what is in your pants than what is between your ears.